at the end of the day, mended fences between EA and Colin Kaepernick. They worked out a deal to put him back in the game. And, Chris, this is significant for a couple of reasons. First of all, there's no way in hell EA is going rogue here and doing this deal without the approval of the NFL. This
have
is
to,
the
right?
exclusively NFL-licensed video game.
Right.
You are not, even though they just signed a new contract, you are not going to gratuitously piss off your 25-year partner over something like this. You talk to them before you do it. You get their agreement before you do it. And there's got to be a story behind the story as to who went to whom. Whose idea was it? How did this ball get rolling to put Colin Kaepernick back in this game at a time when no one wants to put him back in the NFL? It really was stunning that dropped out of the blue yesterday afternoon. And the folks at EA all of a sudden have a high opinion of the guy. Chris, he's an 81 overall rating. We're going to talk more about how that compares to other quarterbacks, but 81 is pretty good, and they view him as a starting caliber quarterback even though he's been out for 3 years, and this is the official NFL video game that's saying this at a time when none of the 32 teams will give him any type of serious consideration. It's really a stunning disconnect between what the people at EA think and what the 32 teams think.
Yeah, well, okay, so there's a lot. First off, it's awesome. I'm glad Colin Kaepernick's back in the game, just to take a positive route here. I mean, yeah, I mean, he's of course, sacrificed a lot, certainly. I mean, he did. He gave up his career to fight for an issue that is way bigger than his career and, of course, has a huge topic here in our country. You know, but as far as, like, where he's rated and things like that, I can't lie, it bothers me a little bit. Like, do you want to start? You want to talk about, like, the quarterbacks that he's rated in front of first? Do you want to list them off? Because, honestly, I think it's disrespectful to a lot of guys that played in football. Yeah, there you go. I like Colin Kaepernick. And if anybody has listened to me over the last 4 years, the first year he was out of football, I said he was better than at least 16, 17 starting quarterbacks. And the second year he was out of football, you know, yep, he's still worthy of being in the starting quarterback conversation, you know, maybe a high-level backup. But to say that he has a better overall rating and he hasn't played football, and we're getting here to 4 years, than guys like Ryan Tannehill, who were just absolutely awesome last year, or Cam Newton, who, you know, has been an MVP of football and is healthy again, or a Jared Goff who's been into the Super Bowl. I think there's a number of names on this list where I look at it and I just go, I think that's absolutely ludicrous to say that he's better than those football players when he hasn't played football in that long of a time. I'm cool with it. I'm great he's in the game, but that's just stupid to me. I don't even know what else to say. Same rating as Ben Roethlisberger? You mean the guy who threw for 5,000 yards 2 years ago and like almost 40 touchdowns and was the highest fantasy quarterback there was? We're going to say he's the same as him right now? That to me, no dice.
One spot behind Kirk Cousins and Phillip Rivers as well. And look, these numbers are by no means set in stone, but it just shows that the video game that is connected to the National Football League has all of a sudden had a dramatic change of heart. And they've got, now look, here's the thing. There's some interesting issues of timing here as it relates to Colin Kaepernick being added to the game.
Right? Is
after 95. Well, I've got two takes.
Yeah.
I raised one yesterday. The other one just occurred to me. If you announce in advance of the release of the game that Colin Kaepernick's going to be in the game, you're probably going to get a boycott. You're going to get a backlash. But now everyone's bought it. I'd say 95% of the people who were going to buy Madden have bought
right.
Madden.
Yep.
The dust is settled. What are you going to do? Return it? No, you can't. It's too late. You've already bought it.
I never
There's
thought of
nothing
that,
you can
Mike.
do about it.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought of that now because we haven't heard any real pushback against EA. One of the reasons these teams won't sign Colin Kaepernick or even talk to Colin Kaepernick is they don't want to deal with the PR hit of dealing with Colin Kaepernick, this reviled figure by 30% of the country. And EA hasn't hit that yet, but they've already made their major sell. They've already had the downloads. The people have the game, and they can say, oh, we're not going to buy it next year. By next year, they'll forget about it. So I think that waiting until yesterday, for a business reason from EA's perspective, makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. That does make sense. You're right. I never thought about it, but yes. You got the people, you got the money, they paid for it. Oh, okay. Now, hey, there's a download for your Madden game. Oh, download. Oh, Colin Kaepernick's on there. Great. But I do. I just think I really do. I think it's disrespectful where they rated him. And again, I know nobody's been disrespected maybe more in the history of the NFL than Colin Kaepernick. But to disrespect guys who have been playing at a pretty high level here, a guy like Josh Allen. I mean, what? There's no way I would take Colin Kaepernick over Josh Allen right now. That's insane. So whoever was doing those ratings needs to go back to the lab and adjust some things.
Can we put the graphic up again? Because I think here's the reality. If you give Colin Kaepernick a 75, right?
Yeah.
Even if you give him a 75, tied with Teddy Bridgewater, behind Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Josh Allen, etc., Kyler Murray. Okay, it makes sense if you see the 75 in relation to every other quarterback.
Yes.
But when you just hear 75, people are going to be like, oh, that's disrespectful to Colin Kaepernick. I feel like maybe from a political/PR perspective, they felt like they had to bump him up so it just doesn't sound bad in isolation. And this is a deeper problem, and I don't want to get into the intricacies of the criticisms of the Madden game, but there's a lot of, the quarterbacks, you don't have to do it on a curve. There can be a lot of good quarterbacks in the Madden game.
But
you can have a lot of guys in the 80s and 90s.
But
you don't have to
the
say
game work that way. That's what the problem is, right?
Yeah.
That's what it really is. Because they can't call plays or have sequencing of plays like Sean Payton does in real life. So therefore, they have to make Drew Brees better than he really is in real life to make that offense work. Like Kyler Murray, a 77. Are you kidding me? What? Come on. That's crazy. We're talking about the best young quarterback in the game right now, the guy we're most excited about, everything about that. He really showed no flaws to his game. He's ranked a 77 because Arizona's not that good. And Cliff Kingsbury's offense is still evolving and isn't good. So that's how they have to make that offense not good. They have to, therefore, handicap the quarterback, which, that's the tough thing, and that's why it's a video game and not reality.
My initial reaction as to why Colin Kaepernick was added to the game yesterday, the Tuesday after Labor Day weekend, after the rosters had cut to 53, after the practice squads had been formed. And look, it very well may be that the real reason was EA just didn't want the backlash, or it may be a combination. And from the NFL's perspective, think about it. If there's talk through August of Colin Kaepernick being in this year's Madden, and we hear he's going to be an 81, and it's higher than 17 of the quarterbacks in the league who are starters. That puts more pressure on the teams to do something about it, right? Even though these aren't real scouts who are coming up with the numbers, just the fact that he's back in the game.
Yeah.
The fact that EA is saying we view him as a starting quarterback. And even if they're wrong, they spend a hell of a lot of time studying film and studying players, and they've got their systems and their algorithms for coming up with ratings. It would have been harder for teams to ignore him and run out the clock. And that's what they did. Back in June, there was talk that Colin Kaepernick was going to get an opportunity. People had their epiphany that Colin Kaepernick was right all along. And the murder of George Floyd proved what Colin was saying back in 2016 should have been paid attention to. He shouldn't have been a pariah for doing what he did. And again, they ran out the clock, and then they needed to let the clock continue to be at 0 before they cranked it up again on September the 8th and jammed Colin Kaepernick back into the game. This isn't something that just happened out of the blue.
No, definitely
This was carefully planned, carefully engineered, and carefully strategized to pick the right time and the right moment to put him back in the game. Whether it's protect EA, whether it's reduce the pressure on the teams, or both, I think yesterday was specifically picked to achieve some goal, and maybe it's multiple goals they were trying to get, because they had to have known he was going to be in the game when the game came out. I doubt this came up in the last week. So, I'm skeptical. And I think it's fair to be skeptical. I'm skeptical about their excuse as to why he wasn't in the game the last 3 years. One of the things I've been trying to find out. Madden 18, he unless he voluntarily and specifically withdrew from the NFLPA group licensing arrangement 3 years ago, when he was a free agent looking for a job like other guys who are unsigned when the Madden game comes out and they're still available in the game. Unless he specifically withdrew from the group licensing agreement, he should have been in the game 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's been fishy, it's been sketchy, And EA's had their epiphany. The problem is none of the 32 teams have had their epiphany. And as we discussed yesterday with Peter King, I feel like we're at the point where they've cleared the wall. It's over.
Yes.
It's not happening.
Yeah, it's done. It is. It as much as I think, Colin Kaepernick, we know he's got talent to be a starting quarterback and do all those things. Yeah, between, hey, of course, yes, the scrutiny, whatever you want to call it, the headache of him being in the locker room, and the biggest thing that he hasn't played so long, which is, it sucks, for lack of a better phrase. It's really screwed up. Because, he was phased out by the NFL, and now that he's phased out by the NFL, and we go, hey, you're still good enough to be in the NFL, the NFL goes, well, you've been phased out for too long now. We don't want you. And that's where it really stinks, and I feel for Colin Kaepernick that way, definitely.
Last point real quickly, the first step would be to put him on a practice squad. And this year you can have 6 guys per team with unlimited NFL experience. And Josh McCown is getting $12,000 a week for a no-show job with the Eagles, where he just needs to be in shape and available if they need him. He's not even practicing with the team. But look, we're going to have injuries to quarterbacks. And when that happens, it's next man up, and it creates vacancies on the practice squad. At some point, that's where it would happen if it's going to happen. You got to get him on a practice squad. You got to get him back into shape. You got to evaluate him that way, because the time to do it was in August. The fact that August is over makes it easier for teams to say, we've got our rosters, we've got our quarterbacks, we know who we're going to use. And the mere fact that he's not on one of these initial practice squads tells me that it's going to take a lot of quarterback injuries or quarterbacks with COVID before that phone call comes. And if I had to bet, I'd say the phone call is not going to come. All right.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.